Thank you. Welcome. I've got good news and bad news for you. Good news is your government is open. The bad news is your government is open and borrowing about $2 million a minute. All right, we're borrowing to pay the rent around here. We're borrowing for our daily expenses. About 40% of every dollar spent up here is borrowed. That's a problem. You can borrow in life, you can have a certain amount of debt, but you can also get to a point where your debt's too much. Many of us who ran for office were part of this Tea Party movement back in 2010. We were concerned about President Obama's spending and debt and how government was overwhelmed by all of the spending. We're now exceeding some of the debts that the Democrats had, and it's like, that's a problem. And so we do have to look at our spending. We're exceeding all of our spending caps. And there are ramifications. This is your economy that is threatened. This is your national defense that is threatened. It was Admiral Mullen who said the number one threat to our national security is actually our debt, our insolvency. You know about it in your own personal lives. You can not spend more than you take in forever. There is a day of reckoning. On the good news side, we have done some good things for the economy. I think that deregulating the economy, the first thing we did when we had all three branches of government last January, that's $60-some-odd billion that freed up for the economy. I think the tax cuts have been good. And some people say, well, gosh, you're railing about the debt and you voted for the tax cuts. Well, I also voted for corresponding spending cuts. I just didn't win on that battle. But what I would say is that the tax cuts are probably going to be bigger than anybody can even imagine. This is about $3 trillion that's being returned to the economy. $1 trillion in corporate tax cuts, but another $2 trillion in repatriation. These are American companies that had profit overseas. Apple alone had $350 billion in profit. They're bringing it home. They're going to pay $38 billion in taxes on it. They're going to create 20,000 jobs. They say that 4 million people in our country have gotten either a pay raise or a bonus. This is probably the biggest return of money to the people to its rightful owners that we've ever had. Because it's not only the tax cut, it's that money coming that was overseas coming home. $3 trillion is an enormous amount of money. How does this differ from President Obama's stimulus? In President Obama's stimulus, he had about $800 million to $1 trillion, but he made the decision on who to give it to. So he sort of picked the winners and losers. He came to your community and said, well, John Smith would be good at running a business. We're going to give him a couple $100,000 to start a business. Well, nobody knows who's good at starting a business. You prove yourself. So what's the difference between that and a tax cut? Well, a tax cut goes back to those who earned it. It goes back to the rightful owners. So it's going to be much more productive capital. But I think we're going to get an enormous amount of growth in the next year or so. So I would pit that growth, which is good, with also sort of this concern about your government needs to get its ledger in order. But I think if you balance the two over time, we can correct things. A lot of our problem is entitlements. We're living longer. We had a lot of kids born after World War II. We've got to figure out something to do. If you gradually raise the age of the entitlements, you can save the entitlements. That's Social Security and Medicare. If you do nothing, it's going to have to be a massive 25, 30% cut across the board. So we do have to do something. We have to face up to these problems. On a specific note, there's something that I've been working hard with regard to health care. And this I'll finish up with. Association health plans. This is letting individuals join together in a group to get group insurance. The Farm Bureau currently in Kentucky sells individual policies. What I'd like is not only for the Kentucky Farm Bureau to be able to sell a group policy, I'd like to see the American Farm Bureau sell a group policy. So we've worked with the president. He's written an executive order based on a law from the 1970s. Currently, the best insurance you can get in our country is if you work for a large company that is nationwide. You work for General Electric, General Motors, Toyota, you get what's called large group insurance. And if you look at the premiums, they're going up 2, 3, 4% a year. The individual market, where a lot of us are in, 20, 25% a year increases in your insurance. So what happens? If not only we band together in Kentucky, but what if you band together all American Farm Bureau? What if we could get 500,000 people in the American Farm Bureau to buy insurance? You'll get the leverage of size, but also even more, or almost as important as your leverage of size, is you become exempt to regulations. This is important to understand. It's regulations on insurance that cause your prices to go up. Why did Obamacare cause prices to go up? Because they added 10, 15 new things that insurance had to do. If you have large group plans, you're exempt from that. Now, when you tell some Democrats in Washington that you'll be exempt from regulations, like, oh no, they'll be taken advantage of. If you believe that, ask your friends who work for Toyota if they like their insurance or not. Ask your friends who work for General Motors or General Electric or Ford, any of these big companies. They have the best insurance in the world. And guess what? It isn't regulated. They're getting it because their employer negotiates for them. If the American Farm Bureau or Kentucky Farm Bureau negotiated for you, does anybody believe they wouldn't be negotiating in your best interest? No, because they'd get the same insurance as well for themselves. Everybody's in this together. But we need to do this, and there's a very good chance this rule is going to be finalized in the next month or so, that if people work hard together, that maybe, and I'm more than willing to talk with the American Farm Bureau on this, if we work hard, maybe we could sell insurance for next year where we could get group insurance for people across state lines and cheaper insurance, less expensive, and hopefully even better insurance as well. I'll leave you with this. I think that the main job of government is to preserve your liberty. I think your rights come from God, and that it is our job to protect these things that are yours before government, before the existence of any kind of government, these individual God-given rights, your liberty. It's our job to protect those, and I'll always work in that fashion. Thank you very much.